Welcome, I'm Todd Robbins. September 21st. A number of abominable things happen on this day. Here's just a handful of them, starting off in 1348. This was during the time of the Black Death, the plagues, the first sweep of the plagues through first the Mediterranean and then up through Europe. And in 1348, they were looking for causes for this terrible, terrible thing. And of course, they blame the Jews. And on this day, Jews in Zurich, Switzerland, are accused of poisoning the public wells. On this day in 1780, Benedict Arnold, the man whose name has become synonymous with betrayal, did what he did that got him that reputation. He gave plans of West Point, the fort at West Point that later became the military academy there. And he gave them to the British Major General John Andre on this day. It didn't end well for them, not at all, especially Benedict Arnold. And on this day in 1792, during the French Revolution, the National Convention, which was pulled together to reform the government and make things better, passed a proclamation announcing the formal abolition of the French monarchy. The king and queen were no more after this. On this day in 1832, according to Joseph Smith, the founder of the Church of Mormon, Latter-day Saints, the Church of the Latter-day Saints, he was visited by an angel Moroni, however you say Moroni, I say Moroni. It gave him the gold plates that had the record of all kinds of, holy things that he then used, a third of them, to translate and create the Book of Mormon. It would be very easy to make a joke here about, because the plates were buried and then lost, and therefore it's easy to make the joke. Moroni, or Moroni, is plural for moron. But I wouldn't do that. I don't do that kind of thing. Moving right along, in 1827, actually on this day, let me clear this up, speaking of moron, 1823, the angel first appeared to Joseph Smith. In 1827, he gave him the plates. This is a very high holy day for the Church of the Latter-day Saints. Having cleared up that, let's jump ahead. In 1915, World War I is raging, and a fellow by the name of Cecil Chubb. What a great name, Cecil Chubb. I bet he looked like a Cecil Chubb too. I'll have to look this up. He bought something in England. What did he buy? Stonehenge, that prehistoric monument that has so much mystery and darkness attached to it. He bought it for £6,600. Yeah, basically what you'd pay for a car. He got a priceless prehistoric monument. Moving right along, in 1921, a storage silo of fertilizer in Germany explodes. It goes boom. It happens. And 500 to 600 people were killed. On this day in 1937, Tolkien's The Hobbit is published in England. Yay, in London specifically. The next year, in 1938, the Great Hurricane of 1938 makes landfall in Long Island in New York, and somewhere between 600 and 700 people were killed. Don't mess with Mother Nature. Unfortunately, it didn't have nuclear warheads that they could use to nuke a hurricane. Speaking of Moroni. Moving right along, on this day in 1939, Reinhard Heydrich meets in Berlin to discuss with the powers that be there, Hitler, an idea. It's called the Final Solution for Jews. I think we know what that was all about. It's as dark as it gets. 1942, 116 hostages were executed in Paris by the Nazis, because that's what they did. 1955 was the last fight of the undefeated world light heavyweight boxing champion, the great Rocky Marciano. He KO'd light heavyweight Archie Moore in the 9th round in Yankee Stadium. And that's how big these prize fights were in those days. On this day, in 1966, Jimi Hendrix changes the spelling of his name from Jimmy to Jimi. Branding, don't you know? That's what it's all about. On this day in 1985, CIA case officer Edward Lee Howard, he takes a powder, as they used to say when someone would flee. He takes a powder. Why does he flee? Because he's a KGB agent. Oops, how embarrassing. Very strange event. I'm going to have to do more research on this one. Maybe put it into my podcast, Abnormalcy. It's the 1995, the Hindu milk miracle. It's intriguing right there, isn't it? The Hindu milk miracle occurs when statues of the Hindu god Ganesh begin drinking milk when spoonfuls are placed near their mouths. These statues drank milk. As miracles go, that's one of the more entertaining ones, isn't it? Moving right along, 2013 was a bloody day. This day, back in 2013. 2012, 2013, you'll hear me talk about days. Those were very bloody years, and various days, just awful things popped up all around the world. For instance, 6 people were killed in military insurgent conflicts in the Philippines. On 2013, 100 people are killed in a series of attacks across Iraq. And 39 people are killed and 175 wounded in a shopping mall gun battle in Kenya. It's also a curious day, this day, because there were a slew of military personnel, high-ranking personnel, that fought during the American Civil War, were born on various years, but on this day. That's what's curious. For instance, in 1820, William Carter Wickham, who was a Confederate brigadier general, was born on this day. 1824, 4 years later, Joseph Andrew Jackson Lightburn, who was a Baptist minister and brigadier general for the Union Army. 1827, 3 years later, Michael Cochrane, an Irish-American brigadier general for the Union Army, was born on this day. And 1832, Samuel S. Carroll, brigadier general for the Union Army, was also born on this day. It's curious. There are a number of other significant birthdays I would like to point out. H.G. Wells was born on this day in 1866, that wonderful writer who basically created, or maybe didn't create, but he certainly refined the idea of science fiction, War of the Worlds, and things like that. And another guy who took it a step further, in 1847, Stephen King was born on this day. Yes, Mr. Shining, Mr. Cujo himself. The Carrie, of course, Carrie. Let's not forget Carrie. And Stand By Me. He wrote the story, that really charming coming-of-age movie, Stand By Me, because man cannot live by darkness alone, so I've heard. And also on this day, in 1952, Annalise Michel. She was born on this day. She was a woman who had mental conditions, epileptic conditions, and had seizures and hallucinations. And because of her condition, she was treated by a number of doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists. It didn't help, So her family did the most logical thing. They brought in the church. And they performed, these priests performed 67 exorcist sessions on her. In doing so, they recommended that she stop taking all of her medication, all of her meds. And this ended up, she stopped eating and stopped drinking water, and she died from malnutrition and malnourishment and dehydration. The Lord works in mysterious ways. But every once in a while, the Lord gets something right, and that's what happened on this day in 1957. Another birthday, Ethan Coen of the Coen brothers, makers of wonderful dark movies like No Country for Old Men, Fargo, and Blood Simple, their first, and Miller's Crossing. Wonderful, wonderful dark movies. And there's one more birthday we'll talk about in just a moment, but there's significant deaths on this day. Way back in 454, Flavius Aetius, the Roman general who stopped Attila the Hun advance and saved the Roman Empire as we know it, was assassinated. There was all sorts of political and military intrigue back in those days, and the best way of dealing with situations was to kill your opponent, and that's what a guy named Valentinian, it doesn't roll off the tongue, Valentinian did to Flavius, poor Flavius. And on this day, another interesting, Jim Kodak, I think, died 1964. He was a Dallas Times Herald writer who was following up on a bunch of leads about the assassination of JFK. And there were a number, I mean, the conspiracy people can spin on this. I'm sure there's a lot out there about his death and a number of other strange deaths. His was one of them, in that someone broke into his apartment and gave him a karate chop to the throat and killed him. Okay. And on this day, Angelo Rosito passed away at the age of 83. He was a dwarf. He was a little person. Wonderful actor. He did a lot of things. I think Mad Max Thunderdome was his last movie that he did, in which he was killed in that under a avalanche of pig poop. And for me, what stands out is he was the dwarf that was on the table, the wedding banquet table in the movie Freaks, carrying the chalice with the wine that everyone drank out of, and they offered up to Olga to drink from, in which she was horrified by this Gooba Gaba, one of us, ritual that was going on, and she ended up calling them all freaks and throwing the wine on Angela. He just got pelted by all sorts of things during his career, but that whole wonderful little dance he does as he's walking up with the thing, it sticks in the mind. And finally, this is the birthday of a lovely young woman named Liberty Larson. Libby, as we know her. She is an old friend and comes from a wonderful family, the Larson family. It's a wonderful, quirky, dark dynasty out in Los Angeles, most known for her great-grandfather, who was a prominent defense attorney in Los Angeles and did his job a little too well and ended up getting a number of very bad people released, found not guilty, and it bothered him, so he decided to give up law, and he became a professional magician, packed up the family in the early 1940s and traveled around the Southwest doing magic shows and seances in hotels, swanky hotels throughout the Hotel del Coronado and places like the Hotel del Coronado, if there is any place like the Hotel del Coronado. It's a one-of-a-kind place down in San Diego. But anyway, I digress. He also was legal counsel for Bess Houdini, Harry Houdini's wife, and was there at the final Houdini seance in 1936 on a rooftop in Hollywood. He had two kids, two sons, and named Milt and William Jr., William Larson Jr., and they went on to create the Magic Castle. And Bill Larson had a daughter named Erica, and Erica had a daughter named Liberty. So here we are on Libby's birthday today. Wonderful performer, great singer, remarkable singer with this voice that just grabs your soul. And she's carrying on the tradition of the Larson family, and I'm honored to know her. So happy birthday, Liberty. Happy birthday. Well, there you go, and there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you do enjoy it, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notifications so you're notified when new stuff comes down the pike, because there's a lot of new stuff coming down the pike on this channel. And please do so, because I do these videos for you, and you know who you are. And I hope to see you back here tomorrow, assuming you survive all the abominable things that will be happening to you on this day today. And if you do survive, great, lovely, huzzah. If you don't survive, however, and you have the opportunity, as you're dying, if there are people around you, draw one of them over and look at them and say, don't tell them. Whatever you do, don't tell them. And then close your eyes and drift away. Always leave them guessing. That's what I recommend. Because I'm Todd Robbins. In regards to what will be happening on this day, well, good luck.